My gun's my metaphor, this bullet's my truth. And if you don't believe me, then I'll shoot you too. In my beliefs, my dreams, my aimless goals of a 6-year-old boy who's a changing home. I never had the tools to stand on my own feet. I was just told, try one day, this might click. And finally, the penny dropped in 7 years of hell. Finally learned how to make a man of myself. I finally learned peace, what a happy day. Now tomorrow comes along, smacks it straight from your way. But then I learned it again, this time something stuck that I can care and not care without giving a fuck. Be happy, not happy, but it's healthy to look at your own emotions grow and be free from this hug, oppressed, dangerous dependency that we call love. Bottom line faith, maybe, yeah, kind of. I'm terribly opinionated, it's not okay, but now I say what I say and reflect to end the days. And if something doesn't sit right, when I think real hard, it doesn't sit with my true self, it belongs to be shared. An apology sincere, not one fake wordplay, like I'm sorry about your emotions, hiding the reality. No change, open-mindedness, same whole blindness, that same stupid cycle justify my own demise. Ha! I laugh at myself rather than looking at the bullet, then it all builds up, I break down, then I'm nothing. Then I'm like bound certain subjects being emotion, judgment, and a legal substance being acknowledged and cared for, because I know it's something. Live your life true to yourself, nobody else. Always look forward, not over your shoulder. This day isn't over, you're only getting older. If I could show you my experience, then you might understand of what makes me delirious, makes me feel less than. But it's not an excuse when trying to be a true man. It's the real fool's juice that we feed to this brand. Men hide emotion, masculinity is the killer. Male suicide, 3 to 4 times bigger. And if you advocate aggro, please check yourself. Because to fix these issues, you can't buy it off a shelf. You beat up other people seeking a fetal position. Yeah, this point might be rude, but this point, don't miss it. It's hard to get help, masculinity and our mission. Stop getting macho and just talk with your missus. To be open and honest is a really hard life. To have compassion and longing, you might just survive. Have you bottled it up and felt you might just pop? Well, I have too, and it sucks. Because you know what? Opening up is a newfound freedom, and I wished on all of you to restart and start breathing my reality change with a balance of yin yang. Femininity strange. Live your life true to yourself, nobody else. Always look forward, not over your shoulder. This day isn't over, you're only getting older. Is this rap, poetry, or spoken word? Whatever it is, it helps me become verbally heard. Whatever it is, it helps me get this off my chest. I'm unsure it could be part of the dumping process, which I don't agree with. Unless it's a solution, because sitting in the moment hurts the worst resolution. It's okay not to be okay if you think why it's happening, but when we're not thinking, we're too busy battling. To everyone I know, if I'm the reason you're hurting, then I'm sorry, I really mean it. You deserve to be nurtured by yourself. You deserve to be free. I've been hating on myself for the person who I've been, but this is my new chapter. I hope it's yours as well. The whole world's waiting once we start to meld. Why don't we raise the glasses up and give a fuck and have some boundaries? Have some care, and definitely learn to love.
Hello guys, I'm Lorna. I'm also Lorna in recovery. I'm a recovering addict, and I like to share a bit of my experience, strength and hope, and hope that it reaches people and that they can identify. And by the end of my story, I hope that these are all coming and get involved and get what I have right now and what I feel right now. But it wasn't always like that, you know. I started using drugs at 9-year-old. I'll go on about a little bit about my past, you know. I was in and out of children's homes 6 weeks as a battered baby, taken back to the children's, and from the age of 3-year-old, mentally, physically, and emotionally, I was damaged. And then I was taken to a children's home, another children's home. And from there, they took parental rights, or whatever happened. And I never saw the family again. I was always a needy kid. I understand why I was a needy kid. I wanted to be loved, wanted and needed. And I wasn't getting that anywhere. I was getting hurt. I was getting damaged. And I thought I would get that in the children's home. It wasn't happening. So I used to run away. Not very far, because I was scared of the dark. And when I was 9, I ran away, and I met it was 2 older men and a woman, and they brought me some sweets. And 10 number 6, I don't think anybody remember that. Like, there you go, the cigarettes, by the way. And I went up with these people, you know, they were giving me the attention that I prayed for. I remember holding their hands and skipping down the road. And that's where I used my first substance. I remember waking up, I don't know what I used. I remember waking up, I've been raped. But whatever that substance was, did the thing that I was wanting to do. It numbed all that. It numbed everything. I carried on doing a lot of other substances. You know, alcohol was involved.
How old was you at that time?
I was nine when I first took the substance.
Oh, wow.
9, yeah.
You got raped at 9.
Yeah. And do you know what used to bug me for a lot of years? Running away from that children's home, nobody came looking for me. Yeah. So that just made it in my head. I'm not wanted, I'm not needed, I'm not anybody. I was told that all the way from being a child, whatever the father and the mother was doing to me and the brothers. I was told all that, you know. And I was tied up as a child. God tied up, you know. And when he wanted to do his business, I was untied. So I remember 3-year-old having my fist ready. I knew when it was going to happen to me. I knew by the smell of it. I don't know if he was an addict. I knew by the smell. As a 3-year-old, I always blamed myself for what happened because, when I was a little bit older, I was in and out children's homes, and because in them days, they just called you a problem child, and they were doing what they were doing. They were abusing you, but they weren't whipping me. They weren't hanging me up. They weren't beating me. And so that's how life was. That's how life was. And when I took that first substance, it probably hit something in me. Did I think it was wrong for them to abuse me? To rape me even? Yeah. No. And then, no. I thought I deserved it. They gave me more substance. I stayed with them for a little while. And then about 10 or 11, there's a lot of things that's suppressed with me that I haven't got memories of. And that might be a good thing. I started, children's home didn't come back for me, So I started learning to run my own life. I remember being 10, 11, in Cardboard City in London. That's what we called it, London. I got over there and I had this thing like I was a woman, I was strong like a woman. I wasn't. And I could find a group of people, everybody I found who were nice to me. Oh, this is where I fit in. This is where I fit in. And then damage would happen. And then that would feed my head and go, I'm bad. I'm putting out something that's making them do these things to me. They were right. The children's home, they're all right. I'm not worth nothing, And so I stayed in that story, of their abuse, and throughout the years, it kept me trapped in my addiction for 53 years. I lived in Cardboard City, went many, many hostels, lived on the streets for a lot of years. I fitted in there, and then I remember I was 49 years old. I did a lot of people a lot of harm. A lot of people I stole. I was in private schools, many prisons, things I had no morals, no values. I didn't know who I was, where I belonged. I thought selling myself, was making money. It made me feel dirty. This is when I got recovery, but it was nothing to me then. I thought I was using the man. All the things I didn't want to do, all the things I said I wouldn't do, I did. Yeah, I did. I had children very early age, and I don't remember the first 3. I remember the names, but I don't remember them. I don't remember the birth. And I was mixed up with my sexuality. I'm not mixed up now. I tried men, I tried women, and it was the women that I was close to was the men that were the ones that disgusted me, to be honest. And so selling myself, being a lesbian, and I will say that, You know, it was just disgusting. I was very, very mixed up, but I always had a lot of anger. I remember 3-year-olds holding my fist, waiting for when I grew up, what I was going to do to them, what I was going to do to them. And my life was just a pattern of going into a hostel. They all wanting to help me, not me telling them I don't need help. I don't know what you're talking about. Thought they were all problems. I turned out this vicious, angry woman, angry against the world because I didn't know who the world was. The world was just there to hurt me. That's how I seen it from being a child. You know, the world. So I was always ready with my fist. I wasn't even a fighter. I was great at manipulating a gang of people that would do the fighting for me and take me taking all the glory, and they'll be on my side. I learned many traits from prison, many traits on the streets, and I carried them with me all the way through. And you know, it was horrible. It was horrible. I knew there was a problem, but I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't know how to stop it. You know, I used to go to services. I was obnoxious with them. Just give us me script. You know, I was in with all the men. You know, because it was easy to manipulate men. It was easy to get what I wanted because of what I had. You know, on me. You know, this kind of thing. And excuse me. And that's how life lived, on the street, in a hostel, kicked out another hostel, back on the street for years and years and years. That's how I lived. You know what? And I thought, this is it. Anyway, this is it. But inside, I would die. And I knew there was something wrong. And if I'm honest, I didn't want to live. I didn't want to live. If I'm honest, I didn't want to live. But you know, God had different plans for me. I thank God for that now. I remember 49-year-old, just before rock bottom. It was 2000, I think it was 2006. And I've been doing this for a lot of years, but this is one particular time I can remember. I had some people come to my house from the street, and I was letting them because I knew they had. And then when they were messing them out, I was kicking them all out. But I let this girl stay because I knew she still had something. But when she was talking, you know, there was something was happening to us. I remember dotting my head, banging my head up all the walls. And I had a drug worker who knew a social worker, and she happened to ring at that right time. And when I can't do this, I'm mental, there's something wrong with me, I want to die. And I remember them coming to get me. I remember, I'll go on to later on when I start recover, and I went to this hospital. And in this hospital, I was really poorly. And they changed my name, and I now understand it was so outside influences couldn't come in. And they talked about a detox and a rehab. They were detoxing me in hospital and a rehab. I've never heard of a rehab. It didn't come from where I was brought up. And I said, yeah. You know, I hadn't plans to go because I still had drugs at home. So, you know, I was bluffing them as I always did. Bluffed them, conned them, tell them what they wanted to hear. And they put me onto this treatment centre. The social worker come, and I hated social workers. I blamed them for everything. But this social worker, I thanked her later. She come and she sat with me. She went, I want you to talk to this treatment centre in St. Anne's. Never heard it, St. Anne's. And I remember talking to somebody, and they were going, you've had a hard life. And I remember going, I know. I was so in that self-pity thing because I lived in that story. We could help you. We'll wrap you up in cotton wool. That's all I heard. Wrap you up in cotton wool. And I said, where is it? It said, it's on the beach. I said to my social worker, go and get me bathing costumes. I thought I was going to go swimming. I was going to live the glory. That treatment centre saved my life. That treatment centre was hard. Saved my life. It introduced me to NA, and I went there, and I started to recover. I never knew who I was. you know, I never, it took me a lot, it took them a year and 5 days. You know, I was in treatment for a year and 5 days because I couldn't break that denial and that delusions. My truth is my truth. What I perceived is what I perceived. They used to tell you, you know, your wrongs that I'd left, that hurt me. You've done this to your kids. No, never. I used to, you know, but then when they started breaking me, I remember this word, the feelings coming up, and there was tears. I've never cried for years. I learned not to cry because there was consequences to my crying. And I remember going like this, used to pull my hand away and I used to get angry. And then one day these tears just come. And I went to NA and I heard the story from a woman and I thought it was a setup. And then I ended up working in that treatment centre. Oh, I was so proud because I knew what I was talking about when I was trying to save the client. I knew it, you know. And I got a phone call. I had never had any. My children got taken off me, thank God, because they would have been right in my manageability, right in my mess. I wouldn't have cared because I didn't care myself. I love my children, even in addiction.
2 more minutes, Lorna.
I could not care for them. I could not. So, you know, from my oldest son, Aaron, I remembered him, and he was an addict. You know, I found him right down in Penzance. But I also had to go through a period of, he also told us my youngest son had died. Yeah. So I had to go through all that. Relapse happened because I wasn't listening to anybody. 2.5 years of relapse happened because I got into a relationship thinking I could save them. Bang, bang, bang. And then through that relapse 2.5 years ago, I was going to this. I wanted to get involved with services, so I got involved with 5 Ways to Wellbeing. It was done by Mark Cotti, and Steve and Louise was there. And I thought, you know, and I was still like, so I kept going. Because it was time. It was safe. I was safe. I felt safe.
Yeah.
And then the 2 guys got a job. You know, Mum, this is what happens. They got a job. They got where they wanted to be. And we took over. Somebody else took over the
That's Steve Brown. That's Steve Brown and Louise. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't know if I could mention the names, but Steve and Louise, and they helped me a lot.
Yeah.
So we took over their group. I went for an interview. I got somebody to write the question, you know, the interview form down. I never read the email right. I thought it was one person. I walked in and it was 3 people. So the fear was on me. But you know, I stayed. I said to my friend, what if you asked me these questions? The first 3 questions was the first 3 questions. So I sat there. I knew I failed. I was dying inside. So from there, a mentor came, Emma, and that was my saving grace. Then Peter, the whole team. Emma taught me that each one teach one. She taught me loads, you know. They taught me for the first time, not just Emma, Peter, the whole team said, you are worth it. You are somebody. Yeah. You can do this. And they put me in at the deep end. And you know what? That's why I'm sat here today, feared up, sharing, because they give to me and I'm giving back to them. So if anybody, I don't know if anybody's got this, but you know what? If anybody out there, right, and they really want to change and feel like this, right, get on the phone to us because we're all here. We will love you, we'll pick you up, and we'll get you to where you want to be.
Lorna, how old are you?
I'm 65 in August.
Woman after my own heart.
Normally, at that age, people are retiring, but you're just getting fired up, aren't you?
I'm just starting.
And John Shinhauser.
Want me to take it away?
Yeah, baby.
All right, cool. For those, you know, I'm John. I'm in recovery. You know, I was thinking, you know, how do you share for, you know, 15 minutes or so and cover almost 38 years worth of fabulous blessings in recovery? It's just so hard to do. and we're a world apart. You know, we're going through, we're experiencing an international crisis, COVID-19. I know because of my visits to UK in the past, social connection is critical for us. You know, I think we're all hope dealers in one form or another. And there's no better way to carry that message of hope than in person, you know, because the newcomers, people who need to hear that hope shot, they crave that personal connection, especially in a correction environment, a jail or a prison. And I spend a lot of my time going inside of jails and prisons. I live for that. And I know the people in jails and prisons, they like getting us in there as much as we like going in there. So old timers, people who've been around for a while, you know, we have money for laptops and iPhones, and we can connect virtual reality. But the new people still struggle with that. So I hope this message reaches people. You know, I got clean in 1982. I was in the Marine Corps. I've been deployed a couple of times. I had a third deployment in front of me, and it wasn't easy getting clean in the Marine Corps. But I had a choice. You know, the colonel said, I'm either going to go to the brig or I'm going to go to rehab. Now, keep in mind, I'd been arrested 12 times by the time I was 23, 4 times in foreign countries. And there's 2 things I knew about the brig. The food sucked and the women were fake. So I went to rehab. And that's when I met my people. You know, our rehab back then, even though it was a Marine Corps rehab, it was in a cinder block wall, concrete floor, steel racks and wall lockers. The counselors, the therapists, they were in recovery. So we had that instant connection of that lived experience, combined with the clinical knowledge of the disease of addiction, spiritual, mental, physical. If you get it, ends are always the same, jails, institutions, and death. But yet you could recover. If you do what recovering people do, you'll get what recovering people get. So I'm new in recovery. I'm going to meetings and I'm seeing things I like. I like people who dress well. I like people who have disposable income. Back then I was 23 years old. So obviously I like the girls myself, but they look good to me, you know? So I knew I would get a great girl. I could make good money and dress well if I stopped using drugs. So I sort of grabbed on to that prize, you know, the prize of a good life. But the only way I felt I could get it was don't use no matter what. I'm an abstinent guy myself. Go to these 12-step meetings, get as involved as I can. Now, you know, it's difficult being involved in 12-step programs when you're deployed to the Indian Ocean on an amphibious assault ship, you know? But that's when I learned that if I put half the energy into chasing my recovery, like I did chasing my drugs, I would be successful. Now, fast forward, you know, I got over 37 years of ups and downs in recovery. You know, I've had decades where I did fabulous financially. I've been married, I've been divorced, I've been wealthy, I've been bankrupt. You know, so I got to live life on life's terms for decades, and it's just absolutely wonderful. You know, looking back, anybody watching this that needs recovery, I can promise you, you will not regret staying in recovery, whatever that looks like for you. Because here we are in 2020, recovery looks a little bit different today than it did back in 1982. You know, back then it was basically 3 pathways to recovery. Now we have dozens of pathways to recovery. And I was listening to the chit chat before we started this live feed, and you mentioned respect. And I got to thinking, you know, back in the 80s and 90s, I used to think, daggone it, if I don't use drugs, nobody should use them. You know what I mean? You know, but now, you know, we have medication-assisted recovery. We have secular recovery and everything in between. And I can't really put into words the value, the love I have for people who need recovery of any kind, and I get to be in their life. You know, they might be heavily dosed with methadone, or they might be on heavily sedated with other psychotropic drugs, or they might be so far down you would think they were just breathing derelicts. But when I get in their space and I get to be who I am, be that authentic recovering peer, and they don't judge me for the way I talk to them, and I don't judge them for the way they talk to me, that connection, that spark, two hearts come together. And in that space, we have a shot for the hope shot, deliver that hope shot. And the hope is that you can have a better way of life. And in my case, it was to lose that obsession to use drugs, because I was an obsessive son of a bitch. I'm still an obsessive person. But then I found that new way to live, and finding a new way to live is what keeps me out of the obsession of destruction that drugs brought into my life. And, you know, each day when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I think about is money I'll never make, women I'll never have. But when my feet hit the floor, I got a high power, God of my understanding. And I say, all right, God, your will, not mine. And I go through the day, and the human part of me wants to drift off into fantasy land, you know. But if I can stay focused on what kind of person am I supposed to be today, am I supposed to be a decent human being that wants to spend my life energy carrying that hope shot to people like me, who I'm uniquely qualified to do. You know, you can't, I'm a big believer that lived experience of peers is critical in delivering the hope shot. I mean, you can go to the grocery store, to churches, or to Walmart. You're not going to find people there that you're going to find in our recovery circles. But if I use my experience to try to help these folks, I get all my needs met and some. I get peace that day. And just maybe I get to watch somebody blossom in their recovery. And that to me is like the greatest gift of all. And, you know, on one, you know, I saw the one lady with the Favor UK sweatshirt. I went there. We went on a recovery walk in Wales. It might have been 10 years ago. I forget how long ago it was, but that was like a bucket list item I didn't even know I had. And then my last trip back, that prison shot, I think I spoke at that prison. And to this day, I'll get people Facebooking me, hey, you met me in prison in England, you know? And, you know, that's kind of what I live for, stuff like that, you know? And don't get me wrong, it's hard being in this space, you know? Those of us that are in this recovery space, like Peter and Emma, and I'm assuming the folks watching, is, you know, every day my phone rings, somebody died, somebody didn't make it, somebody went to prison. So we still, it's almost like we're in a space that there is going to be a lot of death, a lot of mishaps, but there's so much recovery. And if we, the recovering people, don't do this work, who will? We can't leave it up to the special interest criminal justice people, because all they're going to want to do is build more jails and prisons. The social workers, God bless them, they're wonderful, but even the clinical world can't really fix us. The more recovering people we get involved in the recovery process to help our communities, the better we're going to be. And if we just can find our sweet spot as individuals, and I love watching Peter and Emma and what y'all been doing. I've been following you on Facebook for a while. Quite frankly, I'm surprised y'all hung in there this long with each other, because I think when I first met y'all were pretty new. And I remember thinking, well, the jury's out on this one. And I keep telling my wife for 23 years, yeah, I'm still watching you too, you know. So, you know, relationships can be a trip nonetheless. But, you know, reconnecting, being on this live stream, being part of this process tells me how small the world really is, but yet how big recovery really is. And I found like-minded people all over the world, everywhere I travel. And a recent quest of mine is to speak in a jail and prison in every state in America. And I started a few years back. It just became my bucket list item. And I was well on my way to all 50 states till COVID-19 hit. But I've been to over 40 states speaking in prisons. And I mean, I never thought when I was a little boy that I would grow up and my big dream was to speak in prisons. You know what I mean? It wasn't on my radar. You know, how do you get like this? You know, 38 years ago, I'm doing drugs, not caring if I live or die. And now I'm living for that opportunity to carry that message of hope. And even though I'd rather do it in person, because I'm just that kind of guy that likes to be in front of people, you know, but doing it on Zoom like this, virtual reality, talking to you guys, my friends, and recognizing, like you showed a lot of pictures with me in the beginning. And I bet I knew a dozen of those people. I can't remember their names, but I remember their characters. And then I remember the sweatshirt, the UK favor sweatshirt. And I remember the picture of the prison. And it's like, yes, we're connected. You know what I mean? We're still there in spirit and love and heart. We got the same mission. We want the same outcomes. It's like the world, in the recovery world, we're coming together. Even though the rest of the world might be going, you know, like a shot duck penguin or something. But, you know, if you're new, and I imagine people will view this video in the future. If you are new, and if you're struggling with addiction, man, give yourself a break. You know, it's going to be okay. If you can stay clean or work the program that the professionals and the recovering people are telling you to work, whatever it looks like, if you are reducing the harm you're doing, you know, let's say you're a bad alcoholic or a bad opiate addict, if you can reduce the harm you're doing, do less, hang out with people in recovery, chance to get this thing. And you do not want to miss that opportunity to live life on life's terms, being happy, peaceful, and serene with this illness that we have. So, you know, I got to pinch myself sometimes. Is this real? How in the hell does a guy like me stay clean this long and do this well? You know, is it going to end? Yeah, we're all going to die one day sooner or later. But I figure, you know, I got a few good years left, you know. Oh, by the way, I got my UK H&I shirt on too. I wore it just for the cast here. But, you know, and if you know me, you know I like to talk, and I'll go on and on and on. There's no end to me.
Funny
like
you should mention that.
Yeah, I'm like the internet, you know what I mean? You can't get to the end of it.
I know.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Okay, so Release is old. It's set up in 1967, so over 50 years old. We've been providing legal services to people since its inception. So largely at that time, there was, as you know, a huge counter-cultural movement, hippies, all smoking dope. There was also an influx of migrants from the Caribbean, and at that time they were being really, as now, subject to really heavy-handed policing through the drug laws. So using cannabis laws and other drug laws to really oppress people, not because they use drugs, but because of who they are or what they represent in society. So very much we continue to do that work today. So we have a national helpline where we help out about 5,000 to 6,000 people a year. That ranges from legal issues, such as being arrested for low-level possession, but also like employment issues, people being drug tested at work, people concerned about medical reports being released that shows their previous drug use, maybe their history of dependency. And so what we do is trying to help people navigate through that. We also have a drugs helpline, and on that, what we tend to do in the main is to advocate for people who are in the treatment system. So many of you will know, and we work with a lot of the treatment providers. Some are great, they do fantastic work, and I have to say, over the last month, they have been absolutely Herculean in the way that they have supported people on OST and in recovery, to, you know, manage the process and to protect their health, to make sure they're not having to get into contact with services too often. But that doesn't always happen. So, you know, we have a few services where people are being told they need to reduce their OST, whether they want to or not. Funding for rehab maybe isn't available. So we'll go in and do a bit of, you know, sort of brokering between the services and the clients, and trying to find a resolution that respects the client's rights, their human rights, their health rights, and treats them with dignity, because that's what we think is the most important thing, that you treat everybody with dignity. We also campaign for reform of the drug laws. The drug laws don't work, particularly criminalizing people who use drugs. It is counterproductive. It does not reduce drug use, and that seems to be what politicians are obsessed with. But what it does do is create barriers for those who need to get help to get that help. It creates barriers around employment, education, travel. You know, if you've got a criminal record, it's hard to travel to some other parts of the world. And even today, I just looked at the Metropolitan Police stats here in London, and I was shocked to see that the stop and search figures for last month, for April, are the highest since April 2018. And 70% of those searches are for drugs. And most of us will know that that's going to be young kids who are being chased down for small amounts of cannabis, and it will wreck their lives, the criminal record. So we really try to highlight the problems that exist, but also advocate for solutions. So we look at decriminalization, so ending criminal sanctions in the first instance for all drugs. And there's about 29 countries across the world that have already taken that approach. And guess what? They get better health and social outcomes.
Yeah, I mean, in the Lancashire User Forum, we've got a set of principles where we recognise that people matter, not what position that person is in, and we try not to judge them wherever they're at, however they want to run their lifestyle, run their recovery. And there's many pathways to recovery. Some are abstinent, some are medically assisted. There's various permutations, and it's for the individual to decide what works for them, and we respect the right of that. However, it's not always been that case. There's been a divide between people who use drugs and people who don't anymore. And we've said, surely we should be coming together and recognising, you know, there's a bigger fight, a bigger war on drugs. And I've really been impressed with some of the advocacy work you've done, and you've paid a personal price for it as well. I remember reading an article where they blocked you from getting involved in the advisory council.
That's right.
You know, tell us a bit about that.
I'm happy to share that story. I have to say thank you, Peter. And just to say, I agree. I think, you know, unfortunately, and I think government was responsible for this back in 2010, where they kind of polarized recovery against harm action. And these are not at odds with each other. They're part of the same response, you know, and I'm just so impressed with the work that you guys have all done to support people who are on OST. And you're absolutely right, that is and can be a recovery in and of itself. It's about the quality of your life, isn't it? It's not about the state that you're in, whether you're medically assisted or free of medications. When was this? So about 2 years ago, I got interviewed to sit on the advisory council on the misuse of drugs to, along with others, advise the government on its drug policy. Interview went fine. 6 months later, I got a Dear John from the Home Office. And I wasn't going to do anything about it. I didn't really care that much. To be honest, I wasn't that offended. I just wanted to be on the inside track to find out what was going on more than anything else. But decided I'll get some feedback. And that was when I discovered that actually I had been appointed by the panel. I had been deemed an expert, whatever that means in real life, I don't know. But I've been deemed as a suitable candidate for the ACMD, but the Home Secretary had blocked my appointment. And the reason they had blocked my appointment was that they had trawled through my social media account, and they had found a number of tweets that they found offensive to government ministers, including one that was specifically about the drugs minister. So this was Victoria Atkins at the time. She's no longer the drugs minister. And just as an aside, she had to recuse herself from talking about cannabis when she was a drugs minister because her husband owns British Sugar and rents a load of land for the legitimate and legal growing of cannabis. So there's a certain amount of hypocrisy that runs clearly through government. But anyway, what I had complained about specifically was a letter that she had sent to the Advisory Council on the Misuse of Drugs on drug consumption rooms, where once again, and this was not for the first time, probably about the third time, she had misrepresented the evidence globally. I mean, these rooms have existed in 12 countries. The first one was set up in 1986. We've got loads of evidence on this. And she said that the evidence was not there for them and then misrepresented how they operated. So on Twitter, I said it was utter BS.
Yeah.
I stand by that because it was utter bullshit.
Yeah.
Prime Minister, it is your job to be briefed properly and know the evidence and not manipulate the evidence because you ideologically do not agree with these interventions, which we think and know based on the evidence could save the lives of some of the most vulnerable in our society. So I was pissed and I expressed that on Twitter. I do not regret that. So that was one of the reasons. Obviously, I was critical about their policy more generally, and those tweets were flagged, but it was particularly the utter BS. The reason I went to the press, though, was that when I got all of the information they held on me, I discovered that they weren't just looking at my tweets around drug policy, but also whether I had ever tweeted on Brexit or Windrush. I had tweeted once on Windrush, where I had congratulated The Guardian for the amazing work that I had done in exposing it. I had never tweeted on Brexit. And that showed that everybody who was being considered for these types of position in advisory groups is being checked by government as a matter of routine on what their views are on these two issues. And that is not relevant to the policy area. And I thought it was Orwellian to the extreme. So I went to the press about it.
What's Windrush, Eve?
Yeah.
No, so Windrush was the scandal that happened in the Home Office over a number of years, where you had people who had come here from the Caribbean in the 1960s, were illegally deported from this country, who were told after 40, 50 years of working here and being able to show that they pay their taxes and had their NI numbers, were told that they didn't have citizenships. And so people lost their jobs. People weren't entitled to the access to the National Health Service. Some people died because of this. And it was all because Theresa May created a hostile environment for migrants. And, you know, from my point of view, I believe strongly that we are a better country for our multiculturalism and, you know, respect of others. And the fact that you had people here for decades who were British citizens being treated as if they weren't, I was furious.
I kind of want to go, Eve, go.
No.
I would feel very safe if he was advocating for me.
It's scary though, isn't it?
Thank you.
The government can say, we only want people who look like us, think like us, and are shaped like us and talk like us. And if you express an opinion that is based on evidence that we don't like, we'll block you. But
I think, Peter, you see the hypocrisy all the time. Look at all of the Conservative leaders who admitted to their drug use. Everything from cannabis to cocaine to opium. Not criminalized, but yet every day out on our streets, it is the poor, it is people of color, it is they who suffer the brunt of the drug laws, and particularly people who use drugs who are dependent, who are targeted by the police, and yet their drug use is just treated as youthful indiscretion.
So when they polarize harm reduction against abstinent, and those two groups fight among themselves, they're laughing and going.
Absolutely.
However,
and that's why I just, again, you guys, all of you, I know we've been working a lot together over the last few weeks on bringing together people across the country who work in this area, who are close to the ground, to help us report on what's happening to the drugs market, because we're really scared that, we see shortages that could lead to more harmful substances coming along. And it's been just such a beautiful experience. Everybody coming together, drug user activists, you guys, it's just such amazing work.
Yeah, and that's what David was talking about before about the space. But Eve, we've just got some questions. Glenn, can I just bring you in a minute, love? Where are you?
I'm moving around, the sun's getting my eyes.
Glenn,
Yeah, I'm here.
any questions before?
So we've got to bring a couple of questions and a couple of shout outs. So Dave, Scott Parker said you're an inspiration, and you've also touched Stephen Brown when you come into Weimar. Our own Alison Kershaw that works for Red Rose said that she remembers you taking to Lancaster Farms. We've also got a question for is it Neith? Neith.
Don't worry, Glenn, it is a tough one.
This is from John Roberts. I know that he comes on, he's from Wales. He comes onto the LUF Lounge every single week. And he says, what are your thoughts on addicts being treated like victims in case of county lines cases?
Are you talking about the cuckoo? I've got a bigger issue with county lines. You know, I don't like victimhood generally. And I think that when we look at drug dependency, we're talking about complex issues where people are largely dependent because they've suffered some form of trauma. And many of you will have experienced that and know that better than me. But, you know, treating people who are exploited in any industry, including legal ones, I think should get redress, and I don't think should be treated as criminals. I think the whole county lines thing is a little bit of a smokescreen. I think the idea that drugs have been trafficked across county lines is an old one. I was speaking to a QC the other day who said, had they never heard of Dick Turpin? And I laughed, and he agrees with me. He was, I think, yes, there are new elements to this. There are mobile phone lines that can be tracked. That is new technology. Yes. Have young people always been involved in the drugs trade? Yes. In the 1980s, many of you will, know kids were getting involved so they could buy trainers, they could have a better quality of life because they live in poverty and they have no options. So is this a new phenomenon? Not really. Treating them as victims is because of something called the Modern Slavery Act of 2016, which is a nice shiny piece of legislation that the police can now use to increase the sentences against drug dealers. At the same time, these kids are not necessarily being treated as victims of exploitation. They are still being criminalized and processed through the criminal justice system as dealers themselves. So this is all a kind of narrative. And then you wrap it up with the knife crime sort of statistics. And it's an opportunity for government, and we've seen it repeatedly, of going, look over there. It's the responsibility of the drugs trade. It's the drug dealers. It's the exploitation. It's got nothing to do with us. It's not about austerity. It's not about the fact we cut educational maintenance grants. It's not about the fact that our school budgets are so tight that kids are getting excluded from schools if they're seen as kind of problematic. I think the whole county lines issue actually needs to be deconstructed rather than simply kind of who's the victim and who's the perpetrator here. And people who deal drugs, yes, there are those who use violence and are very bad, but so many people who use drugs also deal drugs. So I don't think actually it's very helpful for us all the time to have a very kind of black and white distinction. Things are grey and they need to be looked at through that prism.
Neve, I mean, we're currently looking at our vision and strategy for the Lancashire User Forum, and more people I talk to about these type of issues are getting passionate about being more political and making sure that our voice, because we're saying, it's okay, we've got a voice, we've mobilised and organised a large group of people, and we've changed the narrative from that polarised, them and us mentality. We're together, shoulder to shoulder. But where does our voice influence? Yeah. So that's where we are now, and I think it's just so
refreshing,
on
actually.
Point to have this discussion at this point in time. Yeah. Stop. I'm shouting, aren't I?
Yeah. Sorry.
No, but I would love to work with all of you guys on how to do it, because I think your voices are much more powerful than my voice. I'm the person who runs an organisation and writes policy papers, and and they don't like me very much in government anyway.
We do.
They really don't like me there.
But we do.
I like you. I love you. But I think your voices in the policy space actually could affect change. When you say in your experience, criminalization or the risk of criminalization probably created more harm for me than good, or drug possession, then I think those are conversations that could really push the reform agenda.
That was the very first
Imagine
conviction I had.
prescribing, you know, prescribing recovery, prescribing prayer, prescribing like ACER counselling instead of prison.
So
let's talk about this.
Yeah, let's
you know,
talk
Continue
about it.
this conversation.
First, I've got a lengthy criminal history, and anyone who knows my story knows that I entered the criminal justice system as a 15-year-old child. But as a 14-year-old addict, my first ever charge sheet was for possession of drugs. And that was it. It was in. I was in this. I was in the system.
Yeah, and that's what we often say, Peter, is that possession offences are a gateway into the criminal justice system. And in fact, I mentioned earlier the countries that had ended criminal sanctions for possession of drugs, and what they've done with the research there. They've been able to show that when you do that, you reduce the risk of someone coming into the contact with the criminal justice system. So it's not just reducing reoffending rates; they don't offend in the first place. And so therefore that journey never stops. And you've got that evidence from Australia, from Portugal, from the Czech Republic. So if you want to reduce criminality, don't treat kids as criminals for what is a low-level offence that could be dealt with through education, public health, support, like obviously kids using drugs. But we do it through care, compassion and connection, not through criminalisation.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, imagine you at 15 being introduced to David
Breaks
McCullough.
my...
Well, it has certainly given me something to think about.
I know.
But
we also know you have got family time in the diary, because I could talk to you all day.
Thanks, guys. Sorry.
And we are in a international network meeting, aren't we? So if there's anyone out there that's got any questions and you want your voice heard, please let us know and we'll feed it in.
And will you come back again in a couple of weeks? And
of course I will. Maybe we could talk about all the work we're doing on Corona. And can I do one shout out?
Yes, please. Go.
We have a survey, a public survey. It's on the Release website on the homepage, release.org.uk. And it's trying to find out from people who are buying drugs what's happening to the market.
Yeah.
It's completely confidential. We're not collecting any IP addresses, completely anonymous, but it would really help us to see if things are changing. And Peter and Emma will know we're just really worried about things like fentanyl coming along. So the more people who complete that survey, the more research we can develop and harm reduction initiatives and signpost people to the amazing services like Red Rose Recovery.
Yeah. So that's Release website. We'll tweet it and we'll put it on our web. It's already on our website actually.
Yeah.
But we'll put on it. You know, we'll keep promoting that.
And it really is about bringing harm reduction and recovery together.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. I love you too.
Love you guys.
You know your marriage vow is very secret. The man who put us together now, he ought to make us stick together. Come on, let's stick together. You know we made a vow to leave one another never. You know you never miss your water till you're well and dry. Come on with me and give our love a try. Let's stick together. Come on, let's stick together. You know we made a vow to leave one another never. So if you're stuck for a while, consider a child. How can it be happy without its mother and father? Let's stick together. Come on, let's stick together. You know, united we will stand every boy, girl, woman, and a man.
So the ministry that I'm involved in, we kind of catch all the people that fall through the nets, society, the army lads, the people who suffered abuse, addiction, all these things. And the ministry that I set up is called Church on the Street Ministries, and we work and deal right into those areas that are a bit dirty, really, you know, kind of we're not very popular with authority because we challenge it, but we stand for people that don't have a voice, and
Yes.
and there's a reason for that. You know, there's a kind of reason for that for within my own story. So I've been clean for 10 years, approximately about 10 years now. Like some of the lads and lasses on here, I got clean through a 12-step program, and I had a God experience. But my life, early life, was kind of so I was attacked and raped when I was an 11-year-old boy, and on the same day, my sister died on the same day. And I remember being in bed that night thinking I'm going to tell my parents what had happened. And I was biting the cover and crying so they couldn't hear me crying. And you know what? I never, ever cried again until I was 44 and got clean. There were all those years went by with not a tear. And what happened within that time was I became more and more dangerous, more and more psychotic, more and more self-willed, made lots of money, lost lots of money, became very rich, became homeless over and over again. Nobody spoke for me. I didn't have a voice. It wouldn't come out of my mouth. I had to pretend to be something else because I didn't know who I was. You know, I could just watch Godfather and Black Crombie and Collar would be up. That was what I was, and I see it in the ministry, people struggling, people dying. There's many friends I know that were involved in LUF over the years, close friends of mine, many of which are dead. You know, they didn't make it. You know, they relapsed and they didn't make it. And there has to be a space for the people that fall through the net.
Yeah.
There has to be. So the ministry that I set up is specifically for that, the people that fall through the net. So at the moment, so we work closely with addiction, obviously. So we have a Christian-based 12-step program that's phenomenally successful. It's a very high percentage of people that change. A lot of you guys here, you will know a lot of the people that are kind of it's kind of helped and touched. So we are a church, but you wouldn't recognise our church if you walked in it as a church. It's I'll just give you an example. So when communion comes, I have someone walking to the front for the communion, ordering 1 white, 2 brown on his phone with a dog, followed by somebody who's a millionaire, followed by somebody that sleeps on the car park, followed by an old lady. What we do is we all come together, we all help each other, and we're all the same within it. We have guys, ex-servicemen that are really suffering trauma, that are living on the street, that come to church. They come to church for something to eat, but they come to church to try to fit in with something, to try to do something with that order that they had that's just become chaos because they lost. They really, 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 really lost. We're seeing kind of remarkable things happening. We're seeing lives changed and transformed, and you know, we believe that's God. I'm a Christian minister, you know, kind of type of thing. I had to learn to read and write to get a degree, and that's what I did. And then I got ordained, and then I set the ministry up. So that's kind of a little bit about me and how I come to be doing this sort of thing. But what we're seeing at the moment is, so we've always done a food bank, we've always done the addiction stuff, we've always fed the homeless and things like that. It's just bigger. It's just bigger at the moment because of this COVID. So I set a food bank up, and the food bank's become the biggest food bank in Lancashire over the last couple of months. So we're doing up to 1,000 a week. At the height, it's 1,000 a week, between 800 and 1,000 every week. but I want to tell you so people know what I'm seeing when I go. I'm going to houses. Now, this is not one-offs. This is all the time. And I'm going to houses and I'm dropping the food off. And I'm opening the door and I'm talking to the single mothers. I'm talking to the parents. And I'm telling you, every day I'm seeing children crying because they're hungry. And I'm seeing food banks go and deliver a parcel of pilchards and cornflakes and something else to feed you for a week, a family of 2 or 3. Well, what we say is, bollocks, said the pastor. What we say is, we're going to give you a week's supply of food. I don't really care if you sell it. If you sell it, well, I'll give you double, because whoever buys it must need it, and you must need the money, and you still need feeding as well. So there's no criteria. I don't care how much smack you want to inject into your arm. I don't care how much you want to drink. I just care about you, because I know you don't have that voice.
Yeah, a voice for the voiceless.
So the kids are crying. I'm telling you, and the people who are listening, this is what's happening out there now at the moment. I'm taking food parcels, and sometimes the kids are ripping the bags open to eat the food. The system that we've been living under and operating under doesn't work. Our ministry is very much isolated from the local authorities, because we do it differently, and the kind of support us quite silently at arm's length, so we don't get supported financially from them. I'll tell you what else I'm seeing. I'm also seeing daily, all the time, old ladies in the 70s, 80s and upwards that are crying because they've got nothing to eat, because they've got no family. They're that frightened because the doctors have rung up and said, you're on the list, you can't go out, you must stay in, are you okay for everything? They won't even go out in the garden. They won't even sit out in the backyard, and they're starving, and they're so proud they don't like to ask. So we step in there at that point, because what happens is I build a relationship with all these people. So they're not asking for charity, they're asking a friend to help them out. And that's what's different. So I'll tell you what else I'm seeing. We managed to get so many of the addicted community into housing because they had to acknowledge that they existed, because in East Lancs, I'm sure you know, but how they do the homeless count is basically a joke. It's an absolute joke. That's, you know, the official count is, I go out on a set night in November and you must be undercover and you must be in view. So you must be bedded down and you must be in view. So for an example of if we took Burnley, for example, 2019, there's one homeless person. However, I were feeding 30 to 50 every week. So that's how the figures are. So I'll tell you what we've been doing. We managed to get most people into housing. We've had a year-long battle to try to get a night shelter that the authorities won't back. They refuse to back. So the guys, we got into housing at the moment because of COVID. And then obviously what happens, because they're erratic and they can't follow the rules because it's impossible, they lose the keys, they get off their heads, do all the stuff that they end up back on the street. And the authorities say, look, we told you so. All we're trying to do is say, look, let's give a night shelter so that people can just come, get their head down. It's a starting point. You can get something to eat, get your head down and off you pop in the morning. It's a beginning, because you don't need to be manageable to do that. You know, we can look after you. So we're seeing on the street at the moment, the people that we've got housed over the last few weeks going back onto the street. So on a normal week before COVID, vulnerable and the addicted and homeless community, on any particular day, we'd be feeding probably between 30 to 50 people. And now it's the same, but we're doing it every day now. I'm doing it every day, where we were doing it kind of three times a week before. Now we're doing it every day. So we're not funded by anybody. We're supplied by God. So the people in the communities, especially the addicted communities, do you know what they do? They've got nothing, absolutely nothing. and they go into the cupboards and they take some out and they put it in a bag and they ring me up and they say, Pastor, mate, listen, here, just take this. Do you know what? If you're a millionaire and you give me 100 grand, do you know what? It means nothing. If you've got 4 tins of beans and you give me 2, it's everything. It's absolutely everything. You should be proud that, you know, the people of East Lancs should be very proud of what they're doing and how they're helping us. I'm really, really fortunate that we kind of managed to kind of turn it into a charity now. So I've got good people behind me and helping me and organising things, you know, for me. But the most wonderful things are starting to happen. So this ministry, so when our brothers and sisters pass away and die of addiction and many other things, we don't charge. We do the funeral, I do the funerals, and we don't charge. But again, it's not very popular with the undertaker because he can't stick his bit on. So we're not popular. We're not popular. And this is what happens, you know, and you'll find it yourselves working within addiction that, you know, like the lady said, the lady who were on it earlier, Nave, was it? You won't be popular when you do what's right because you'll be challenging authority. And when you challenge authority, it's not popular. But I'll tell you what it is popular with. It's popular with God and it's popular with the people who are suffering, you know. And the kind of the notion of the ministry and the notion of Christianity that I preach and we put out within the ministry is that, you know, when you see a homeless person or an addicted person or a soldier sat on the street that don't understand why he's there because his head mashed in because of what he's done and what he's seen and what he's been around, and he no longer feels part of life. And you see people and they buy him a cup of coffee and they give it him and they sit and they have a little chat and they walk away. Well, buy fucking 2 and sit down together with him. If you had a friend, listen, just let me tell you this. I'll take my friend out for coffee, right? I'll sit in coffee shop and read my paper, right? And you go and sit on wall outside. Wait, get 2 coffees, sit down. Excuse my language, my bishop will absolutely kill me, but he won't be listening. I don't swear that often, only when I get passionate. Buy 2 coffees, sit down side by side with your brother or your sister. You need the sufferer. You need him or her more than she needs you. And if you can get that mentality into your mind, your hearts will be changed. The love will come together and we can, you know, we can change the world a little piece at a time. I'm listening to these guys on here and I'm absolutely inspired by everything that I've heard. All the guys, everything that I've heard, you know, and from meeting Pete all those years ago, probably 10 years ago, and just remembering where I was at, that all I was trying to do on that day was blag a few fags, a few quid and something to eat.
Look at you now.
Because that's where I was at.
Yeah.
And now I'm the person
me.
trying to give somebody the same thing that I was trying to get.
The hope shot.
You know, so, I mean, I kind of, I've been lucky. But the more I pray, the luckier I get.
Absolutely. There's a few more blessings here coming in for your pastor, Mick. If you want any free media, David can help you out there at the top. Have you seen him? And Kate Fury, if you need to give out any soap, she's got a soap shop she's going to tell you about in a minute.
Brilliant.
So there's offers even in the room, coming in the room.
Well, that's amazing because the amount of food stuff and the amount of, you know, soap and things like that that we need is phenomenal. But I've never ever had to turn anybody away yet. The provision keeps coming, and like I say, we don't get funded by anybody, but the people, give.
Mick, tell us about the system you use.
All right, so I can tell you the food bank system. So what I used to do, so I call it redemption because that's a theological, God, lovely phrase, or transferable skills. So I used to be, I used to work within I used to be a drug dealer. Let's not mess about. So I used to sell drugs, lots and lots of drugs. But I had a system. So this system was really simple. The stuff had come to me, and I'd take it and I'd give it out to other people, and they'd bag it up. See what I did there? Bag it up. So they'd bag it all up. Then I'd go back, I'd pick it up, I'd drop it off, and people would disperse it. That was the system.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we do with a food bank. It's the same system, and it works just as well, and I never get caught. So, it's kind of nothing. The thing is, nothing's wasted.
Yeah.
Even the bad stuff that happened when I was a child. I kind of tell you this, and then I'll shut my gob, I think, because I can ramble on when I get going. But and I said right at the beginning that I was sexually assaulted when I was a child, and my sister died at the same time. And what had happened was my mother used to take distilled DGs for a bad back. I knew nothing about drugs. I was just a sweet little boy. But I knew the pain went away when she took them, and she could do stuff. So I took them. I don't even know why. And I was instantly addicted because I floated out in my body, and I got this nice, warm, cozy feeling. And that's what happened. Now, when I came into recovery and I got clean, and I felt this passion to want to help people that were like me, I found a guy in McDonald's, and he was an alcoholic and a drug addict, and he was really a mess. Anyway, I helped him, and I was astounded. He got sober, he got clean, and I supported him the best I could. And I got him to some of the fellowship meetings and stuff, and he did really, really well. And he got his family back in his life and all the things and everything else. He died clean and sober 2 years later. Now, this changed my life. What I'm going to tell you now absolutely changed and transformed my life. This is what led me to become a pastor, really. One thing I never told him, he was the man that raped me. And when I met him, I wanted to stab him in the neck. By the time I'd helped him, I couldn't say I loved him like Jesus loved him. But what I can say is I didn't hate him. And when I didn't hate him, I felt all this forgiveness inside myself for everything I'd done and all the people I'd hurt. And I just want to tell you that forgiving someone is only a choice, and it doesn't make it right what was done to you. But you can choose that. I chose not to stab him in the neck, and that was the beginning. And believe it or not, I had a knife strapped to my leg as well. Even though I was clean and sober, I was still ill. And I would have done, but I chose not to. And I got close to him, and I helped him. And there came a point where I didn't hate him. I crossed the line from hate. I didn't quite make it to the love, but I cared. And I'm telling you, in all my recovery and all my life, and it's been the forgiveness from what's done to me, and the feelings that I've got from it of myself being forgiven have been unbelievable. It drives me. It's like an explosion inside me. I can't tell you that there's nothing I can't do or won't do. There's nothing that'll get in my way. I don't fight. I don't do anything wrong, but there's nothing that gets in my way because I've got this power in me that's not me. And it's that. And you know, people will get sober. They will get clean. They will find God, and they will be free, and they'll no longer be trapped, and they won't be sat on streets. The old people and the children won't be crying because we can make a difference. And when we do it together and we help each other, there's a power in it. And I call that Jesus and the Holy Spirit. You can call it Dave. I don't care what you call it. You know, I'm just telling you it's real.
And when you get in that state,
thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak as well. Thanks.
Thank you. That's
Beautiful.
Really heartwarming.
I was just saying then, I was just thinking then as you're talking, and then when you get in that space, you can bless your enemies. But you can't do it without getting in that space first. And that's
basically, like all academics, I'm in danger of talking too much. So just stop me if I do go on for too long. So yeah, I thought I could kind of set the scene a bit for you about where this idea comes from. And it's quite unusual because on the whole, what we know about mental health recovery, what we know about addiction recovery seem to live in different places. And it doesn't make sense because for a lot of people, they suffer from both issues. And so there is a kind of twin recovery. Anyway, so there was a big review done about nearly 10 years ago now about what works in supporting people in recovery. So it's not a definition of recovery. It was done by a woman from the Institute of Psychiatry in London, and called Leamy. So it's Leamy et al. Is the reference. And if anyone's interested, I'll send them the paper. Just drop me an email. And what they did was they took a whole load of studies on mental health recovery from all over the world, and they tried to synthesize down what makes projects successful in helping people recover. So it's almost like mechanisms. So it's really important to say this isn't what recovery is. These are things that every service should aspire to, or every group should aspire to. And so that you've said already, it's called CHIME, and CHIME's an acronym that's made up of 5 core concepts. So the C stands for connectedness. The H stands for hope. And I'll go through them all again in a minute. I for identity, M for meaning, and E for empowerment. And basically, what does any good service have to have? And like all academics, I have no original thoughts of my own. I just stole this idea utterly shamelessly and have used it widely in my own work. And quite often I'll claim it as my own. So basically what the idea is, and the bit that I love about it, is it's always struck me, and I'm a big fan of a guy called William White in America, who is like the father figure of recovery, the recovery movement. And incidentally, he started blogging again yesterday, so everybody should look up William White's blog. So, and his idea is recovery is contagious. Professionals can help, but fundamentally, recovery transmits from one person in recovery to another person in recovery. Professionals can support and help, but we aren't the contagion. It's peers that are the contagion. And the idea of it basically is positive human connection, where you see, which in its bluntest terms is kind of, I meet somebody who's already further down this road. You just mentioned it earlier, 2 minutes ago, Pete. I make a genuine positive human link with them, something transcendental happens, and that connection generates hope. And it strikes me that the other nice thing about CHIME is it's nearly in the right order. Yeah. So the connection, human connection, generates hope. So it's like, I see somebody who's got it, I want what they have, I make a human connection with them, and a door opens. And in my own work, over the course of the last 15 years or so, I've collected about 2,500 recovery stories. Scotland, England, Wales, Australia, New Zealand, America. And the only common element across all of them is nobody does it alone. Yeah. There's always people or groups who inspire. And what they inspire, in my opinion, is hope. Yeah. And what the hope does, the next acronym I'm going to add in is Goya, after the Spanish painter Francisco Goya. What does the Goya stand for? Get off your arse.
Yeah, baby.
And that's the meaning part. That what the hope does is inspires people to believe they can do stuff to make their own recovery happen. So the meaning is short for meaningful activities, doing things. And in our own big recovery study in Glasgow and Birmingham, the two things that predicted positive well-being and quality of life in recovery were the more stuff you did, the better you did. Childcare, volunteering, working, education, training, any of those kind of pro-social activities, plus the more time you spent with other people in recovery. And that effectively is the connection leads to hope, leads to meaningful activity. But crucially, once you're involved in meaningful activities, you then get into this lovely circle where doing stuff allows you to feel empowered. And as psychologists, we call that self-efficacy. I then start getting a sense I'm a person who achieves things. I am somebody who can do stuff, and it boosts my self-esteem, it boosts my sense of well-being, and it inspires me to try and achieve other things. And that allows you to, and the identity part, allows you then to start saying, I am a good person who does things. I start to see myself. And as you start to see yourself in a different light, other people start to see you in a different light. And, you know, I've made this all sound as if this is a nice, simple bump, 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 bump game. But of course it's not. It's complex, and there'll be all kinds of drops and falls. But as soon as I saw the chime stuff, it just, and I go and visit recovery groups, and I get asked to evaluate lots of them. And it's always the first thing in my head. And I would say for all of you, if you work in any recovery group or community, you should constantly be thinking, do we do chime? Because it strikes me now, I can pretty much within 3 or 4 hours, with that thought in my head of looking at a recovery place, say, well, let's start if it's empty. Or if the peer recovery champions are utterly miserable and are grumpy and don't talk to people, there's no buzz or positive feel about it. Like, this isn't good. I spent, 15 years working in traditional treatment services where it failed the mother test. You know, the mother test where you go in and say, would I let my mother come here for treatment? Absolutely not. And, you know, and I worked in some of those services. The Maudsley is probably the biggest, at that time, was the biggest NHS treatment provider in England. We covered South Thames, so we had a catchment of 4.5 million people, and we had 22 services. And some of those services, the moment you walked in, you kind of thought, nobody's getting better.
You can feel it. I was talking to Mark about this the other month. You can always tell a service by the energy that's in it.
Yeah, and don't you think it's a two-way thing? And it's not the staff fault, because so often they don't have any, they're struggling for resources, caseloads are too big, staff get burnt out. I did this thing in Australia about 10 years ago now, where we did a survey of like 280 workers in Victoria in the southeast of Australia. And the higher their stress and burnout levels, the poorer their therapeutic relationships with clients. And crucially, the less optimistic they were about the client's outcomes. You know, so basically, if you get this, like, it works both ways. If you've got workers who are burnt out, stressed and miserable, they can transmit that to the client, and the client transmits it back. You know, whereas in a recovery service, you get the opposite. The person comes in, there's a genuine human connection that inspires a sense of hope, that generates that belief that I will take a gamble. I'll start to do stuff. And when it's got nice academic labels and names, but you all know what I'm talking about because you see it all the time. And when you see it happening, it's just like a human miracle.
Yeah, it is.
And that's a good point for me to stop.
Yeah, I just want to say there. So every time I talk about the hope shot and us being hope dealers, that's what I mean. Think China.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you just perfectly academically wrapped it around what we actually do. What was the name of the girl that came in for you? What was her name?
Rebecca Apperson.
Rebecca. Oh, I loved Rebecca. I was doing a degree at the time, and I was like on a case, you know, teach me. What are you doing? Research.
Well, she's doing her PhD now.
Oh, is she? Please give her my love.
I will do. I definitely will do.
Please give her my love.
Yeah, definitely.
So Emma's describing you and a colleague doing an evaluation of Red Rose recovery. And at the time, what we recognised was that lots of us was coming into contact with people who, you know, we was out trying to inspire hope, but if you're not careful, sometimes it can just suck all the life out. You came in on Friday evening after spending a day giving out naloxone. What was you like, Emma?
Well, yeah, but I am an empath, me. But sometimes I think when you've been away from the streets for a while, so I go out on a Friday just one day a week now instead of all the time out there. It's just a massive realization and an abundance of gratitude for where I'm at today, and I'm not out there, you know, deprived. They had nothing. I mean, you know, oh, there's some guys in little flats that people call supported housing. It's like the flats, and there's 4 guys in. Like, what? And it hurts my eyes, the world, sometimes, and I have to do what I need to do to keep me well, or I'm no good to anybody.
Yeah. And one of the things I think that, you know, this time around, we need to do so much better is how do recovery leaders and recovery leadership support each other? Because it just struck me that I know a lot of people that I really like and respect have been around the field for 10 or 15 years, and some of them are really struggling because unlike clinical services where there's all those apparatus of supervision and all that kind of stuff, however good it is, we've never managed to work out that kind of peer support process for people who are kind of who are those visible recovery champions that are just key to the success of the whole system.
Absolutely, and this is exact same thread I was talking to Neve about last week, and about advocating for a leadership committee. I think we've tried before with CVD. We tried a few years ago, but nothing ever came of it.
Well, there's 2 things there, isn't there? There's establishing a support network of leaders and like a network, but then knowing that we've got relationships with people who have got access to the resources that sometimes we don't have as small organisations.
And the thing that I would say about in 2010, when the big opportunity came with the English government policy, there was no radius of trust. So what you had was all these people who put themselves forward as recovery leaders who were kind of either pushing their own agenda or even worse, trying to financially profiteer out of it. And I think the one thing that we need to say is it has to have that grassroots foundation, and it has to be based on people who trust each other, not people who represent vested interests.
Oh, David, I could talk to you for hours. I really
You'll have no viewers because I'll just bore everybody to death with boring research. So, look, it has been a genuine pleasure. Oh,
you're probably going to get questions. Glenn, is there any questions for David?
They're quite quiet at the minute, but I've got a few shout outs, and there is a couple of questions about the chime model because it's rung true with quite a lot of people. So we've got Chris Judge, shout out to Chris Judge, saying that how do they find out about this chime model a bit more in depth? We've got Lorna that's saying it'd be great for you to come and do a talk at Red Rose Recovery on the chime model.
Happy to, if I'm ever allowed out the house again.
Okay. We've got Lorna saying that she bets that Emma shaved Peter's eyebrow off in his sleep.
Everyone's going to be looking at my eyebrow and focusing at my eye.
You'll have to stay in now for another 5
Or the hat, Pete.
Yeah.
So, David, if you want to answer the viewers, how can people look a bit more in depth around the chime model?
When I finish this call, I'll email to Pete the paper it comes from. Brilliant. And feel free to circulate that about. Basically, what they did was they took this bundle of big studies and they tried to distill all these studies internationally about that showed what worked with mental health recovery. So I realise I'm shouting, so I should quieten down as well. They took all these studies and they basically drilled them down to identify themes. That's what a systematic review is. Yeah. And then they were clever enough to work out, actually, we could identify these single word themes. I mean, there's a lot more to it than that. But I like the fact it's one of those things that I like the fact that they've drilled it down to something so simple. Because I think every time you go to any service, you should be thinking about, it's easy to remember that. And what's more important than easy to remember, it's dead easy to see when it happens.
It is, and there are some connectors in the community, like we've got connectors out there who are making changes. We should call them change agents, which leads me nicely on to William. Did you say William White was out tweeting the other day. We need to
No, he's got a new blog out. He sent me an email yesterday.
Oh,
and
did he?
he's not been he's not been keeping great for a while, but he seems to have got a bit of energy back, and he started his blog back up again. So I would recommend everybody go on to William White Papers, because it's just like a treasure trove.
It is. It absolutely is, the white papers, and you know, all the ABCD is what we live and breathe for. So even in our attempts to train people up and train up service users and train up people, you know, that don't have the privilege of education around stuff like this, is keeping it as simple as possible so they get the concept and understand the value, because the value of the individual, helping the individual.
Yeah, and you know, even if you go for university academics, we all should operate on something that's called the principle of parsimony. If there's two explanations, the simplest one's the best one, and it's the elegant simplicity of ideas that makes them good.
Oh, say that again.
The principle of parsimony.
Time.
So just on that, so if David's going to email Peter with information on how to look into the child model, and if you can forward that on to me, I'll put my email in the stream. So if anybody wants to email me, and I can get that information out to you.
Well, in the information link, there's our website. We'll make sure we get that document as a resource on our website. And if you're interested in learning from us,
sorry,
we will, you know, we'll touch base with us on the website, and we'll support you to access either resources, or we'll give you the benefit of the 10 years experience Emma and I have had creating a space, and opportunities, connections. Yeah. Thanks, David.
No, it's been my pleasure. It's been lovely to talk to you. And, you know, more than happy if you want me to follow up with any questions or ideas. So you have a wonderful weekend and stay safe. And thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, David. Thanks.
Take care. See you later.
See you later.
See you later. Mick, there is just so much love for the sinister minister.
How you doing? You all right?
Better for seeing you.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful.
How's it going out there, dude?
Yeah, it's tough, but it's really, really good. So it kind of seen a lot of things happening. So we've got a lot of things happening with kids who are struggling to get food. So we're breaking through quite a lot there. Also with the education for the kids, we're breaking through a lot there. We've got packs that we've put together that meet the national curriculum, and we're delivering into the less fortunate families. They've been really successful. They've kind of doing a lot of good. In other ways, it's kind of things are happening that I didn't expect. So we've got like so some of the guys. So what we call it repentance. So if you compare it to step work, it's kind of turning away from your past and looking forward and making amends and things like that. So I've been praying with people, some of the lads who are in addiction, and trying to get involved in that. And what I didn't expect is they've all been giving me the knocked off gear to get shut off. So I've ended up with like iPhones and iPads and laptops, and then I've got to dispose of them correctly. So what I'm saying is we're seeing genuine commitments to change. So I'd call that, turning to God, but we can call it genuinely I've had enough, and just take it away. I want a new life. I want a new beginning. I've never had as much knocked off gear in my life. Do you know what I mean? So I'm dealing with that. The kind of people kind of come. I think obviously because I'm a minister, so people kind of open up. So I get a lot of people disclosing things for the first time in their lives, you know, kind of like about abuse and sexual abuse and the links between loss and bereavement and addiction. So like, was it David, the professor? So he was kind of talking, and I could have saved him a lot of time. He could have just read the New Testament, because it's the same thing. It builds a community. So we give the 12 steps from the gospel. So it's because that's where it comes from, you know, whether people like that or not, that's where it comes from. You research it, that's what it is. But it builds community. It pulls us together. We go and tell other people. People are empowered. They want to go out and do things. And kind of that's what we're seeing, you know, that's what we're seeing at the moment.
How does stigma and society's attitudes affect the work that you do and the people that you come into contact with? I'll tell you why I'm asking that question. I was talking to a chap yesterday he represents and speaks to a lot of senior leaders in the system, and he was saying some of his friends, his personal friends, used to have an opinion of people from our community and people who were on benefits and people who were, you know, in poverty. They used to, you know, have this idea they were just scroungers, they were freeloaders. Only recently they're changing the perception because they've had, you know, their own business and they've been furloughed or they're having to live off benefits themselves. And now they're realising just how difficult it is for some of these families. They're changing their opinions. How does that benefits themselves? And now they're realising just how difficult. Are you there, Mick?
I'm here. Yeah.
Just muted.
Melanie's just dropped in the house.
We've had Melanie and Paul dropping.
Beautiful.
Okay,
go on, Mick.
I mean, answering that is kind of so. I'm delivering food parcels to the more affluent areas with Mercedes and Jags on the drive. You can't eat a Rolex watch. Yeah, when you haven't had the money drop, and when you've been living on credit, you still can't feed your children. It's a bit of a leveler. You know, the kind of there's an equality. There's gaps where, so what we do is where there's an injustice, we try to put it together. So it's not about people that don't have any money. Poverty's got nothing to do with money. Money's irrelevant to poverty. It's something internal, something inside. It's a mindset. It's a spiritual thing. There's a spiritual poverty. So when we take food out, I'm not really interested in the food. I'm interested in what that looks like when I give it. So what goes into that? I'll give you an example. So if I'm taking a food parcel out, there's people that have no money, and I know them really, really well. They're very, very poor, and they've put 2 tins of soup in a bag, and they fetched it to me. And they've done it because they care and they want to make a difference. And I'll put them 2 tins of soup in a bag, and I'll put some pasta in and put some bread in that's been given in that way. And I'll take that out and I'll give it, and I'll talk to the people when I'm giving it. That's the leveler. There's a spiritual poverty in this country, in this world, in the times that we live in. And that is what needs feeding, because when you feed that, nobody will go hungry again, because we'll all give from our own poverty. And it's a leveler, you know, and people that come against that, come against it because of their own greed, their own selfishness, their own self-centeredness, and that's what's destructive. So as a ministry, what we do straight off is, I tell them straight, you know, we tell them straight. So I have about 5%, maybe between 2 and 5% that blag. So they're trying to blag, they're trying to get something for naught, they're just trying to, they've got enough, but they want more. So I just respond to it and I just tell them the truth. So the truth would be, listen, I go to houses, children are crying because they're hungry. They really genuinely are starving. Now, I can give you some food, but think about it. If you don't need it, don't take it. Yeah. So I like to tell people there are no, so they know I know. So what I've done there is I've spoken to their own defectiveness, their own sin, whatever you want to call it, and give them a chance to repent and turn away from it. And that is what ends poverty.
In your experience, does that work?
It works massive. It's life changing. That's why I get people giving me the stolen property. That's, you know, kind of, that's what happens. You can kind of do the 12 steps sometimes in 5 minutes, in essence, not in depth, but in essence of what you're doing. You know, it's kind of, I spent some time once, you know, with a guy who was going to die. This taught me everything. I took him home from hospital to die. He was an alcoholic, and I looked after him for 3 days. And what I was doing was I was pouring cider into a little cup and rubbing it on his lips, and I was looking after him. And they told me he would have died in agony and in pain. And he said to me, "Mate, you believe in that God thing, don't you?" And I said, "Yeah." He went, "Oh, you're mental." And I just carried on looking after him. We were a friend, looked after him, did the best I could. And he told me about his wife, his kids, his ex-partners, how they'd all wronged him. And then on the 3rd day, you know, he said to me, "Mate, it weren't them, were it?"
Yeah.
I said, "No." He said, "It were me." I said, "Yes, will you pray for me?" I said, "Yeah." And I just said to him, "You know, are you sorry for everything that you've done? And do you believe there's something bigger and better?" And he said, "Yeah." And he died in my arms. He had no poverty. He died in peace because he knew his own defectiveness. And it's never too late, you know, right up until the last moment. It's never too late to get that peace. And my belief is that peace and that love's eternal. So that never dies. So for me, my friend lives, and he lives in you now because I've just told you. I've just told you about it. And that's the love that we put into the food parcels and into the feeding of the homeless. And that's what the gospel of Jesus Christ is. That's the freedom. You don't have to be religious. You just have to live it. Yeah. That's it. I'm not religious at all.
Let me ask you another question then, Mick. What turned you from a drug addict, a drug dealer, an addict, a criminal? Are they all true pictures? Yeah. What turned you from all those into an ordained minister?
Well, I had an experience, so I mean, I'll word it carefully so I don't put myself in prison, I suppose. But let's just say I'd gone to collect some money off somebody, and I had how can I put it? Well, I had a gun in a plastic bag wrapped up, and I don't know what would have happened. Well, I do, but I'm not going to say. And the guy came out of a gym, and I jumped out of the car, and he had 2 children with him, 2 little girls, and he was holding the hands like that. And that, I didn't care. I just didn't care. I was a very cold, calculated person. I didn't care less. I was smoking that much crack. I wasn't bothered anyway. But there was light shining off his hands, and I couldn't see. It was blinding me. And I started to feel sick. Wow. I started to feel different. And I went and jumped in my car, and I drove off. And I never felt like it before. And I said a tiny little prayer, and nothing happened. Nothing changed. I just said, "God, if you really, you better do something." And nothing happened. Nothing changed. And I put the gun under my chin and pulled the trigger, and it never went off. It didn't go off. And it was an automatic weapon. They do not jam. Anybody knows anything about it, it wouldn't jam. I went away. I fired it, put it down. I'd had this experience of God, and I never used a drug, and I never drank a drop from that day on. But life got really tough. I had to face lots of things, as we all know. So that I had an experience that I believed was God, and it moved me from that point on. And that's not long after that when I met you, Peter. That I was in that state of, I still want to rule the world. I'll still cut your throat, but yeah, I don't know what I am anymore. Yeah. And I was like that, you know, at that time when I met you all those years ago.
And I think there's a time in there as well where that's the level, and that's if you're going to do it or you're not. You know, when you can actually own your own stuff and look at everything has been a result of I'm the problem. But to get to that point, we need other people to teach us, don't we?
Yeah.
And you know, you are an amazing teacher,
so
Mick, and there's a lot of love for you.
Because there's something about rough and ready guys who start to rechannel their energies, their passions, and
make the difference.
And
women.
And women.
Excuse me.
Yeah, and women. Do you know, wouldn't it be great if we could mobilise a few more of those?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think it's really important to never forget what you are, never forget where you was and where you're going. But it's so up until I came into recovery, so I've had wonderful experiences since. But to the point of the recovery, the happiest time of my life was in a psychiatric unit. Yeah. So that was the happiest time. And it was because I went in there with nothing and the people there didn't judge me. They give me like cigarettes and I had no shoes. They give me the trainers and the trackies and stuff because I was ill. They give it me free. They didn't even ask. And I found love in there. And that's where I ended my... that was my rehab, surrounded by people who was just like me.
Yeah,
that's
but they cared. They cared. So I went from I'd just love to share this because this was my last drug use really, but it was coffee. So what happened was I'm in the psychiatric unit and I just couldn't stand it anymore. I couldn't get any drugs. They wouldn't let me out. I couldn't even have a fag, they won't let me out. I was climbing the walls and punching doors and everything. It were horrendous. And I thought, right, what I'm going to do is they had coffee in sachets. I thought, I'm going to snort it. I thought, I'll get up on that. So I nicked a few sachets of coffee. I had them in my room. And I pushed it all up and I'm doing big fat lines. And I thought, right, just bending down. Starts whacking these lines of coffee. And I'm thinking, yeah, I'm feeling it. And the nurse come in and she said,
"It's decaf."
It was decaf. Honestly, I'm doing decaf. Now you tell me another addict, right? That's got me. Did you do decaf? I love it. No. Do you know what I mean? So that's that was my recovery. Do you know what I mean? That was my methadone. Do you know what I mean? So. Somebody said get some Brazilian, but that was that. So that's what happened. Some Colombian. That was it. So, yeah. So what I'm saying is,
there's some questions for you. Just Glenn, do you want to come in with some questions from the guys?
Yeah. So hi, mate, Glenn here. So there's a couple of questions for yourself. So John Roberts from Wales. I know he tunes in every single week.
John, big shout out to John.
He's saying, do you have a Facebook page or how does it connect with you for people that need support?
Yeah, so it's I have Mick Fleming, but we have Church on the Street Ministries is a Facebook page and we try to channel everything through that, but they can also come onto my Facebook page. So either Church on the Street Ministries on Facebook or which is it's COTS, so short for Church on the Street. You COTS, you'll see it on the symbol, or they can come to my page directly. It's just Mick Fleming.
Tell me
Phil.
As old as time, soon to be put to the test, to be whipped by the winds of the west. She'll carry on through it all. She's a waterfall.
Go on, Phil.
Stands on shifting sands, with scales held in her hands. The wind eaters whips her and wails, and fills up her brigantine sails. We'll carry on through it all. She's a waterfall. Yes, we'll carry on through it all. We're a waterfall.